In this recording, we'll discuss ear anatomy. Alright, so your ear, the structures associated with your ear, are responsible for your sense of hearing as well as equilibrium or your balance. Now we define the structures of the ear, we can categorize them as being part of your outer, your middle, or your inner ear. So we can see our categories: outer, middle, inner ear. So let's start with our outer ear. We've got three structures normally associated with the outer ear. You've got the auricle, also known as the pinna. This is the large elastic cartilage portion of the outer ear. It tapers down into the fleshy lobule or your ear lobe. Okay. Both of these are covered with skin, and they help funnel sound waves into the external auditory canal, which is our next structure. Now, if you prefer external acoustic canal or your external auditory meatus, it's all the same thing. Okay, I don't know why we need 12 names. You might know this better as your ear canal or your ear hole. All right, this is where you stick your Q-tip, y'all, like you're not supposed to, just like I do. This is technically a depression in your temporal bone. It is also lined with skin, just like the pinna. We've got sebaceous glands here, and we have ceraminous glands. Now, ceraminous glands make ceramin, which sounds fancy. It's just earwax. Okay. Now, that earwax actually does have a purpose. It's responsible for helping lubricate and waterproof both the auditory canal and the tympanic membrane, which helps with funneling the sound waves in towards the inner ear. Okay. It also helps trap and remove debris. And again, we all know that we're going to assist with cleaning out that debris with those Q-tips like we're not supposed to. Again, not judging you. Okay. Now, our third structure, tympanic membrane, eardrum. Okay, you probably know this as your eardrum. This is the separating line between your external and your middle ear, and it's actually how we transmit sound waves from the external ear into the middle ear. So if we look at our picture, this big elastic cartilagey part, that's your auricle or your pinna. You've got the little ear lobe or lobule at the bottom, all skin covered. We're going to funnel those sound waves into your canal, okay, your external acoustic meatus, your ear canal, auditory canal, whatever you want to call it. And then we're going to hit that tympanic membrane, that eardrum. Okay. Now this image shows the tympanic membrane being associated with the middle ear. Some scientists kind of put it in with the middle ear because it transmits sound to the middle ear. Some put it with the outer ear. We're just not really going to fight about that. It just is what it is. It's right there. Okay, it's that dividing line. All right. Some people might say, well, the front side of the membrane goes with the outer ear, but the back side goes with the middle ear. Again, y'all, we're not going to fight about it. Now, the tympanic cavity, also known as your middle ear, this is an air-filled chamber. Okay, we just said that we're going to separate from the external auditory meatus at the tympanic membrane. So again, that eardrum is that dividing line. This is where we find our pharyngotympanic tube opening. You might know it as your auditory tube. You might know it as your eustachian tube. Again, it's one of those structures that has 25 different names. It's all the same thing. Your auditory tube is responsible for connecting your nasopharynx with your middle ear. It helps you equalize pressure on both sides of the tympanic membrane. When you have pressure differences between these two regions, it reduces the ability of your tympanic membrane to vibrate appropriately. And when we can't vibrate the tympanic membrane appropriately, that negatively affects your hearing. So if you have ever been in like an airplane or something and your ears have popped, that's kind of what's going on. We're trying to equalize that pressure. Now, the rest of the middle ear structures, we've got your auditory ossicles. You have tiny, tiny, tiny little ear bones. These connect directly from your tympanic membrane all the way to the inner ear itself. These little ear bones have fun names. You've got malleus, incus, and stapes, or the hammer, anvil, and stirrup. Okay, you might prefer hammer, anvil, stirrup, but please also know malleus, incus, and stapes in case you see them on your exam or quiz or something. Okay. Malleus is the first bone. It is connected directly to the tympanic membrane. Those sound waves will then be funneled to the incus, the middle bone, and then onto the stapes, the innermost bone. This is connected to the oval membrane, where we see the oval window. Okay. This is the opening in the stapes itself that surrounds the inner ear. This is where we are going to transmit the sound from the middle to the inner ear specifically. This is also where the sound waves are focused, okay, as they move through the ossicles. And then one more structure, we've got the round window. This is another membrane, thin membrane. This separates the fluid-filled inner ear with the air-filled middle ear. So we mentioned that the middle ear was air-filled. I told you we were going to make that distinction because we were going to have another area that would be fluid-filled. That's going to be that inner ear that we're coming up to next. Now, unfortunately, the middle ear is a good place to get an infection, otitis media, middle ear infection. This usually happens because microbes have traveled up your nasopharynx into the middle ear, and they're taking up residence, and they give you an infection, and you got to go to the doctor. Here we go. Here is your tympanic membrane. You can see the sound wave coming through. We'll go malleus, incus, stapes, and then that oval window is behind here, and we would go directly into the inner ear, which is this big blue thing. Okay, so that is our pathway. And you can see our eustachian tube, our auditory tube here. If you can imagine microbes coming up the tube, there's this nice little space for those microbes to gather and multiply, and that's where you get that middle ear infection, unfortunately. Now the oval window is kind of on the back side of the stapes, so it's a little hard to see. And then the round window, this particular view just isn't very good. It's hard to see that it is round, but it is round, I promise. Now we've officially gotten into the inner ear. Okay, this is fluid filled, as I mentioned. We have two main components here, bony and membranous labyrinth, which is kind of a hard word to say repeatedly. A labyrinth is basically kind of like a maze. It's a network of serpentine pathways, which all these wonderful adjectives floating around. So everything's kind of twisty and turny. We've got a bony membrane, a bony labyrinth and a membrane labyrinth. And guess what they're made of? Bones and membranes. I know, pretty good name. The bony labyrinth specifically is part of your temporal bone. Okay, just to kind of give you an idea of where we are still in your head. And then the membranous labyrinth. Y'all, this is hard to say. This is fluid-filled tubes. Okay, you have inner ear receptors here that are going to assist with the whole hearing and equilibrium senses. Okay, now we said your inner ear was fluid-filled. Got to talk about the fluids. We have two types of fluids: perilymph and endolymph. Perilymph is found between these two labyrinths, the bony and the membranous. Okay, your endolymph is found inside the membranous labyrinth. Okay, so just remember, endo basically kind of means inside, so we're inside the membranous labyrinth. Okay, now I know that's a lot of words, and it gets a little confusing, so let's make sure we look at a picture. Alright, so anything in blue is part of the bony labyrinth, anything in orange is part of the membranous labyrinth. So we can see blue versus orange very easily. The stapes has been removed, so you can finally see the oval window and see how it really is oval-ish shaped. This is a better image of the round window. You can see it really is round. Okay. Anything in dark blue would be the labyrinth itself. Any of this lighter blue, okay, lighter blue all the way around, that would be the perilymph. And then the orange, the darker orange, would be the membranous labyrinth itself, and then the lighter orange would be the endolymph. Okay, so you kind of get a better idea of what we're talking about. Okay, sometimes it's hard to get it from just a bunch of words. All right, so we have officially made it into the inner ear. So let's talk about how we do hearing and balance. All right, so we've got three structures for the inner ear as well. So 3 kind of seems to keep coming up over and over and over. 3 here, 3 there, 3 everywhere, right? So first we've got the cochlea, then we'll do the vestibule, and then we've got the semicircular canals. So cochlea is up first. This is, if you like, spiral shaped, or if you prefer snail shaped. This is the cochlea. All right. You are going to have some receptors here. Okay, these receptors are responsible for your hearing. Okay, so your cochlea is your organ of hearing. Now, what we're going to do is anytime we activate these receptors, they are going to create action potentials that will then be transmitted to your brain for processing so we can figure out what it is you're hearing. Okay, so your cochlea is your hearing organ. You've got a few other structures associated with the cochlea as well. You've got your organ of Corti, or your spiral organ. Okay, you have hair cells here. Okay, that sit on a basilar membrane. So these are the hair cells that we're talking about. This is the basilar membrane. Okay, so here's what happens. These little hair cells, okay, are what convert the sound waves into electrical impulses, aka action potentials. And then those action potentials are going to move through these axons. We'll go through these ganglia, just like we did in the eye. And then all of these connect. If we jump back up here, all of these connect. See, all of these are connecting. This will form the cochlear branch of your vestibular cochlear nerve, your cranial nerve number 8, and all of those action potentials will travel to your brain, and we'll figure out what it is you're hearing. All right, so structure number 2 is your vestibule. Okay, this is responsible for detecting balance and spatial orientation, so this helps with our equilibrium. You have more hair cells here, and I should mention that these hair cells, so these little hairs that we're talking about, we're not talking about the hairs that you've seen usually in men, the little hairs that grow right inside the ear that a lot of men will trim, things like that. We're not talking about that kind of hair cell. These are way down deep. Remember, we're in your inner ear at this point. Okay, these hair cells contain otoliths, which are basically little rocks almost. Lith usually means rock. Otto would be ears. These are basically little ear rocks. They help us detect movement. And again, this helps us deal with your equilibrium as well. So this gets kind of strange, but just stick with me, okay? These hair cells, okay, that have these little ear rocks, these otoliths, that's all suspended in a gelatinous mixture. So basically, jelly. Okay? I know. Don't give up on me, right? So this gelatinous mixture, it moves when your head moves. Okay? As your head moves, and as the jelly moves, the little rocks move. Okay? As the little rocks move, they hit the little hair cells, which triggers action potentials. Okay? And we send those action potentials to your brain for processing. Okay? This is how we know when your head is moving. This tells your brain when your head is tilting, when you're doing linear motions, things like that. All of these action potentials will be traveling down these axons, all these little axons, will be gathering together, will go through the ganglia, and will fuse to make the vestibular part of the vestibular cochlear nerve, cranial nerve number 8. Okay, so remember, vestibular cochlear, we've got vestibule and cochlea. You just learned that the cochlea is the hearing part. Your vestibule is your equilibrium part. Okay, so again, it's a little weird, right? You've got jelly, you've got rocks, you've got hairs in your inner ear. Like, it's a little bit weird. But as your head moves, it causes the gelatinous membrane to move, which moves the rocks, which bump the hairs. Okay, those little receptors are then activated, and we're going to send action potentials to your brain. Okay. Here's a nice little picture as well. Again, you can see those little rocks, and they would be all over here, and we'll just put them in the top here. This is the gelatinous layer, so as this moves back and forth, it moves these little hairs. Okay. And you've got receptors in here that would notice those hairs moving, and we can transmit action potentials down these nerves. Okay. All right, so our last structure is the semicircular canals. You have an anterior, a lateral, and a posterior semicircular canal. Okay. These do enclose fluid-filled ducts, so there is more fluid in there. This helps us determine rotational head movements. Okay, so if we go back one, your vestibule helped with spatial orientation, head tilting, linear movements, things like that. Your semicircular canal, we're going to do rotational movements. Okay, so just a different type of movement. Each canal is set up somewhat similar to what we just described. You've got the hair cells that respond to the various types of movement in the same way. Remember, the jelly is going to move, the rocks are going to bump the hairs, so forth and so on. This type of information we're going to be sending is more about the direction of movement, the strength of the movements, things like that. And again, these receptors are still going to be sending information through the vestibular division of cranial nerve number 8, because this is still dealing with equilibrium and balance. Now, if you have ever suffered from an upper respiratory infection, it could affect how much movement we can do in here in the semicircular canals, and if we really kind of mess up the transmission of these signals, this can lead to vertigo. Okay. If you're not familiar with vertigo, look it up. I hear it's pretty uncomfortable. Your head spins, or your head feels like it's spinning. At least the room feels like it's spinning, even if you're laying still.